Welcome back to another episode of Right Here in Mass. Joining me today is Matt Smith, who is the founder of Wandering Soul Beer and Hidden Path, who has carved out a distinctive path that mirrors the industry's own evolution. Founded in Beverly, the brand began as a deeply personal venture in craft beer, but has since grown to embrace the changing dynamics of how Bay State residents approach drinking. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's my pleasure. For our listeners, your full and extensive bio is listed in our show notes, but I would love to give you the opportunity to just start off by sharing more about you and what you do at both Wandering Soul and Hidden Path.
Sure. Thanks for that. I'm the founder of Wandering Soul Beer, and I wear a lot of hats. Pretty much any business function that you can think of, fortunately or unfortunately, falls on me. Um, and with Hidden Path, it's basically a sister company to Wandering Soul. Or a DBA, however you want to call it. And that's also, I'm the owner and founder of that as well. And so basically, all sides of the business, distribution, sales, marketing, accounting, social media, um, deliveries. That falls on me. The one area where I do have some help is on production, because I don't have my own production. Well, I do have a production space, but it's too small to really make anything. Uh, I don't do large batches out of the shed behind my house, which is it's a licensed brewery. The shed behind my house is I have a state and federal permit for that. But it's mainly used to just come up with the ideas for recipes, and I produce those recipes at other larger facilities. So sorry for being long-winded, but yeah, pretty much whatever needs to get done, I'll do it.
Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you started Wandering Soul first and then Hidden Path. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, I started Wandering Soul Beer in 2018,
Mhm.
and I started Hidden Path in 2023.
Awesome. And so I'm curious to hear what led you into this space overall. Like if you've always worked in the industry, firstly, and then secondly, what inspired you to start that second brand of Hidden Path?
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I've been in the craft beer industry since about 2012. Um, and I was doing some home brewing and things like that at the time, and was really getting into the local beer scene. Meanwhile, I was working for a much larger company that has nothing to do with beer. And one day I basically woke up and said, "Yeah, I'm ready to just dive into this industry because so much of it resonated with me, mainly just around flavor profiles and creating something from scratch. The branding elements of it, really all of it spoke to me, especially being a musician, because I really believe that the craft beer world and the music world, there's a ton of overlap um, in the creativity and the creative process. Um, so yeah, I just decided to jump right in, and Hidden Path kind of took shape as something that I wanted to create for myself, as a non-alcoholic product, that's treated the same. I treat it like a beer, but it's a sparkling water with hops, and citric acid and a brewer's yeast strain. So the same ale yeast that we use in the production of the beers goes into Hidden Path, but the yeast actually doesn't ferment anything. It's just there as an added component, and it smooths out the flavors. But I kind of saw a need in this emerging beverage sector of what's known as hop water. There weren't many there are more now, but in 2023, which is just a short time ago, there weren't very many of these products out there. It's not a beer, so there's no calories, there's no sugar, but it does use some of the ingredients in beer. And so I was basically trying to come up with my own recipe for this stuff that I could enjoy because I was trying to see how close I could get to creating a beer. And it started as, brewing a recipe that was 1% ABV, 2% ABV, 3%, and kind of just going up to find the tipping point of, okay, when does this taste like a beer?
Hmm.
Um, and so through a lot of experimentation here, and I'm in my kitchen now, this is where I kind of came up with it in the shed behind my house, came up with a recipe for Hidden Path, and we produced it on a large scale in at a brewery in Norwood, Castle Island Brewing. That's where I'm currently producing my beers and Hidden Path.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of how it started. And with Wandering Soul, it started partially as a grief project, actually. I was in the beer world working for a brewery, and my wife was pregnant with our first daughter, and she was stillborn, and it just came totally out of the blue, and just shattered us completely. So what that led to for me was a long journey through a very dark time, and I had to leave my job. I was working for another brewery, and I wanted to, in order to ground myself through that, I had to do something.
Yeah.
And I had been working on a beer recipe for a 5% ABV, hazy IPA, but much lower alcohol than the other ones that are out there, most of the other ones. So I decided to call that beer Melody Maker. Our first daughter was named Melody. Um, and it was a way to have a legacy for her. And it was supposed to be just one batch dedicated to her. It was a very healing experience for me to put that first batch out there. Literally brought me to tears when I saw it in stores and online, and her name is printed. The whole story's right on the can.
I love that.
Um, and so that's how it started. And I still treat it as a very personal journey, exploring things like grief and things that people don't talk about. That experience for me was so isolating, and my wife too. It's one of those things that happens to people that people don't really talk about. Um, and in the beer world, it's been really interesting to do something like this because beer is traditionally a fun, happy, social beverage. You don't see many beer projects that dive into things like this. But the way I view it is beer is the mechanism. It has to be good, otherwise people won't buy it. Um, but the story behind it is what drives me
Yeah.
because it's my life, and that's I had some people cautioning me in the early days, like, be careful, don't you don't want to make people sad, or you don't want to be too personal, and that was like speaking a different language to me, um,
Hmm.
because there was no other option. It was either implode and don't talk about it, or find some way to get this stuff out of me and into the world, and it took the form of a beer. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I
so that's
think
kind of how.
that's, yeah, it's an incredibly powerful story, and it makes me think how true it is about the statement that you made earlier about the um crossing of like the craft beer industry and the music industry, because that's one thing too, is that when people write music or sing music, that can be a way of releasing or kind of showcasing the grief that they might be feeling too. And so I just think that's a really powerful story that you have. And I love that what you've done to be able to honor your daughter in that sense and have built a really incredible brand out of it.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. You're right with music. It's the same thing. It's, it takes a lot of courage to get up in front of people and play an instrument
Hmm.
or sing in front, and that's something I've done for many years, but I got so nervous every time because you're putting something so personal out there. And, music is like its own language. It's, people call it like the universal human language because music, you know, you don't need to speak a certain language to be able to hear it and interpret it. And for me, beer's the same. And beverages are the same. You're communicating something to people. So like through the experience of it and the branding and the imagery and mainly the flavor profiles, because it took me a long, long time to kind of hone in. And, I brewed that recipe for Melody Maker 20, 30 times. I kind of lost track because I was trying to get it perfect, because the last thing I knew that it had to be the truest expression of something, of exactly what I wanted it to be,
Hmm.
because mainly because of what was surrounding it. Um, and it feels like a lifetime ago. It was a long time ago, but when we brewed that first batch, it was very emotional. And not just for me. Um, that got out into the world, and it kind of caught on. The Boston Globe wrote about it, and then I found myself on TV talking about this stuff, and I just heard from like so many people that had gone through like so many different things related to loss and losing people in their lives or losing a child, and these people felt like they could open up to me, and it just opened this door that, like, it's the most meaning that at that point I was like, this is the most meaningful thing I've ever done, because I could see how it was resonating,
Hmm.
and I responded to everybody, and not just a fluffy thanks whatever response. It was some of these stories I heard. I had to really take it all in,
Right.
and and then just just offer something back to what people were giving to me. And yeah, it's been amazing. It still blows my mind all the time.
Yeah, to think about the positive impact that has come from something that was so heartbreaking. It's really wonderful to think about how you've been able to then bring people together. And kind of too, when you going back to the music and craft beer similarities, I mean, I also think about how both industries help to build community and bring people together. And so as you share in your story here, I mean, that's a true testament to that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, too. And it's another thing about grief. Like, grief is something we'll all unfortunately have to experience at some point, and it brings people together actually.
Hmm.
If you look at any culture throughout human history, there's a process to grief. There's a communal aspect. People have funerals where all these other people show up. They help people get through these things. So, it's the fact that there's a community around that, and then around things like beer and music, it's just so powerful. Like the fact that people can come together to help each other that way.
Yes,
It's amazing.
I
So
agree. I
it's
agree.
one thing that we're doing right as the human beings, helping each other out in that in that way, because you can't get through grief alone. I
Right.
mean, it's already so isolating, right? So like, and it's uniquely isolating to lose a child in the way we did. So
Hmm.
I didn't even know that happened to people. Like this is one of those things. It's just like, when that happened, I became like the old me went away, and there was a new version of myself that I had to get to know. And that new version of myself was the one that cooked up this recipe and this idea. Um, and it was definitely a way for me to get through all that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
still is. It still is, because it's my way of keeping, a memory alive. And for me, this is going to sound maybe a bit strange, and I don't want to be too long-winded, but when you're making um, a beer, and when you're brewing a beer, you're literally bringing something to life. And with any idea around product or marketing, you're bringing an idea to life, right? And so, like with making this beer, you're literally taking yeast, which is a living organism, and you're fermenting it and creating an actual living thing.
Hmm.
And for me, there's this symbolic thing, this sort of analogy to keeping a memory alive, in a sort of literal sense. Um, and it's just really powerful. I'm really lucky that that this resonated with people, and I'm lucky that I was able to heal in this way because I fully realize that many people don't get this opportunity.
Mhm.
Um, it takes courage to put something out in the world and hope it comes back to you.
Yes.
Um, but a lot of people don't know what to do with these feelings. Um, and yeah, I consider myself very fortunate to have been on this ride for 6.5 years now.
I know. Oh my gosh, you must look back and and think like, how has it already been 6.5 years? It must simultaneously feel like it went by really quickly, but also like, wow, it's been a long time.
Yeah, and you add, because this business started pre-COVID. So like if you add in
Yeah.
COVID time and trying to navigate that as a business that was pretty new,
Hmm.
in a world where, as the world was shutting down, I was watching the canning line at this was when I was making stuff at Bentwater Brewing in Lynn. I was watching the canning line just fire off the biggest batch we've ever done. And meanwhile the world's shutting down and I'm like, wow, this is
Yeah.
crazy. Like what is going to happen? Um,
Seriously. And I love that you brew at Castle Island in Norwood now because, fun fact, that is where Massachusetts Business Network's launch party was held. And I love it at
oh,
Castle
awesome.
Island. And it's such a great spot. So I love that
Yeah,
similarity there and that you use it now.
it's great. I've through the years I've moved production here and there. I've bounced. I shut the whole thing down at one point at the end of 2022 because it was just I felt like my work was done. I was like,
Mhm.
I can't do this anymore. I've accomplished what I wanted to, and like, it was just so physically demanding this sort of work. Because when you're the guy getting in the van and hauling, like thousands of cases of beer and kegs all over the state, it's like, you know, it's a grind. But yeah, it's changed a lot. But Castle Island is where it started, and it's cool to be, I'm back there now, and those people know my whole story. Coming in there for the very first time, they all knew exactly what this was about. And yeah, those guys are awesome.
Yeah, it's a great spot. And then, of course, you can't forget Bardo's. That's my favorite thing about it, too. I mean, I don't know if they
Yeah,
do it at Norwood, but I know in Southie, as a bar pizza lover, you can't go wrong with bar pizza and beer.
I know. Yeah. They do the Bardos thing at both spots.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good spot about it. But I'm curious to hear, since you do have these two brands, like how do you juggle both? I can imagine that's overwhelming, like you said, being mostly a one-person show. How do you do it all and still be able to find time for yourself and your family?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's definitely led to a bit of a split, maybe a split personality disorder. Because I'm constantly flipping between the two, and I
Mhm.
don't. What I'll do is like we'll brew a batch of Hidden Path, and when I say brew, it actually is brewed like a beer. I think some people see hop water and they learn about this category, and they think that you're just taking water and like throwing in hops and carbonating it, and it's just like a fizzy beer-like drink. But there's actually a full process to making it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, like on one area where I've definitely noticed, because like I said, we'll brew Hidden Path, and the next month we'll make a beer, then the next month we'll do Hidden Path and a beer. They're so different. Like not only are they different brands and different beverages, each has its own identity. Wandering Soul is like literally my life story printed on beer cans, and the beer recipes are all mine. But Hidden Path, when I started that, I wanted to more fulfill a need that was less personal. Or the branding is less personal. I treat it more like this is what it is. It's as close as I could get to making a beer with not being a beer, but it's really take the people it has resonated with. It's kind of mind blowing to me because a lot of people that are like sober or sober curious or recovering from they've been through again like people I've heard these stories from people and like people with celiac disease and cancer, people that can't drink anymore, um, people that have gone through the 12 steps. And it's amazing. It's the fact that these people, number one, even tried this stuff, and that they'll go and like buy it by the case. When I was just, fiddling around in the kitchen here trying to come up with something that worked, and I kind of had this light bulb that went off when I started making these little tiny 1 gallon batches and started adding a beer. I'm like, oh, well, what happened if we took this beer yeast like and put it in? And it just smoothed out like hops from beer can be very they're mainly in a pelletized form. They look like little rabbit, like little pellets. um, but they can be very harsh unless you're like in their raw form. Like you would never want to pop one in your mouth and eat one. I've done it. Most brewers have, and it's pretty gnarly. They're just very bitter and harsh. So I was trying to find a way to smooth that out, and
Mhm.
by adding the yeast strain in, that it just changed the whole thing. And I was like, all right, maybe there's something to this.
Mhm.
And then we brewed like 8 batches of it now, and it's pretty cool. It's cool to have it be pop up. It sells. I'm selling all wholesale, but I do a lot more online stuff with Hidden Path because I can ship it anywhere.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, and it kind of it sells better at stores where that are not necessarily beer stores. Like it's at like you can get it at Whole Foods, for example. And like little specialty grocery stores and stuff. It's kind of has a cult following. I think the beer brand does too. Um, I've just tried to make sure that what I'm doing on a daily basis is is the strangest thing possible. It's it's funny because if you told me 10 years ago I'd be driving around in a van delivering something called hop water, I would have been like, "What is what is that?" And what are you smoking? Because there's no way that I ever thought my life would be like this, but it's amazing. For me, what drives me is that people uh, care. You know, putting something into the world that people care about, like people will go and seek out and buy.
Mhm.
It's just so awesome. It's really very cool. I'm not making much money at this, honestly, but like it's well beyond. It's so much more. I can survive off of this. Um, and there's been many ups and downs, but the fact that it's like helping people in some way is just huge for me. That's more than means way more than money to me.
Absolutely. Knowing that you've had that impact on someone, which I think is really remarkable to think about. And as we get into or almost at the end of actually February at the time of this recording, what are some exciting things that you might have coming up this year for both Wandering Soul and Hidden Path?
Well, the in terms of Wandering Soul, I've been looking for a potential location. I've operated for over 6 years without a physical location. Um, and so that's on the table. And that's one thing. Either way, that business is going to change very soon. I'm about to announce that. I can't
Ooh,
quite say,
exciting.
yeah, I can't quite say what's going to happen right now, but I will within the next 2 weeks. And with Hidden Path, that's something where one really exciting thing that's coming up is there's a program called Ales for ALS. It's through the ALS TDI initiative, which does a lot of research for ALS and potential therapies and treatment and creating a community around people who have ALS or who've lost someone with this disease. And so they partner with breweries all over the country to brew a beer within this, and they collaborate by providing their own hop blend that they select.
Hmm.
And they'll collaborate with the brewery and donate. The brewery will then donate some of the portions back to ALS research. They've never done anything non-alcoholic, but in April we're going to do an Ales for ALS hop water Hidden Path, non-alcoholic um, hop blend that they will be providing. So it's yeah, ales for ALS, Hidden Path. Be interesting to see in that world too, especially with research and stuff for ALS to do something in the realm of a non-alcoholic beverage. I think is just going to be really cool, and I'm honored to be the first brand they've ever worked with that's done a non-beer.
Yeah. That's a big testament to what you've produced and what you've been able to, I guess, is brew the right way to describe it? Do you
Yeah.
brew it?
Yep. Yeah. It
Okay,
goes
yeah.
through
So,
it goes through
yeah, that's a
a
huge
beer process.
testament to that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I'm pretty psyched. I'm really, they're excited too because I think
Hmm.
that there's this growing movement around not just sobriety but options within things that don't have alcohol that sort of mimic, they trick your brain in some way. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, and that's really what I've been trying to do with Hidden Path. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And you mentioned earlier too, or alluded to that there's been challenges and ups and downs that you've faced throughout having built these two brands throughout the past 6.5 years. And so, what would you say is something that you've learned along the way that if there's someone who's listening to this episode who might be on a similar journey to you, like what's a piece of advice that you think they'd really benefit from hearing?
oh man, that's a good question. Um, I've learned so many things. I'd say on the personal side, I'll separate into personal and business, and I'll try to not be long-winded. Um, on the personal side, I would say that in terms of having a creative outlet, I just think it's so important. And in terms of expressing emotions, especially things that are traditionally viewed as dark or sad or um, you know, things that are very strong around grief, specifically around grief, is just so important to find, I think, something that you can do that will help you and whether it helps others, it's great if it does, but it's also a very personal thing. And putting something out into the world to have some sort of legacy for the person is just it's so healing,
Mhm.
and it many times it will resonate with a lot of other people. And on the business side, I would say something I've learned um, is try not to underestimate um, what it actually takes to put a product into the world. Um, I every single time I get in that van that I'm staring at right now, it's like my best friend and worst enemy, that van. It's I feel like I always underestimate what it actually takes to have a full day of delivering beer or hop water in Boston, in the city, in the ice, in the cold.
Mhm.
You know, my mentality is always like, let's just do it, wing it. Let's just like get it done, let's go. And then by the end of the day, I'm like, what did I do? Um, because it's just, it's backbreaking work. And
Mhm.
you know, I've tried to handle the main reason that I do it this way is number one, it's the only way I can really make any money off of it is if I literally do everything myself. And that's particularly around distribution because if this is something I'm finding different ways to talk about, but in the state of Massachusetts, and really in any state, we have the three-tier system in the alcohol world, and if you sign an agreement with a distributor, which I've done in the past, I've worked with several distributors. We produce the brand, they distribute it, they bring it to the stores, they are the ones that the stores pay for the beer, and then the consumers buy it. Um, but in the state of Massachusetts, when you sign an agreement with a beer distributor, you're basically locked in. Um, there's no real easy way to get out of that. There's a lot of old laws in place here. And I had to, I was in an agreement with a distributor and I got out of it because I wasn't the only way for me to make any money is just, like I said, to do everything myself. The profit margins are a lot less if you're cutting in a distributor. And
Hmm.
so I tried to take the whole DIY, punk rock attitude and just apply it to this thing that I'm doing. But there's a price to be paid because it is intensely physical. It's a lot of driving and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, I would say business advice, just try not to underestimate. Um, Look at all the different facets of the business, what it's going to take to get this thing out there and stuff, and just try not to underestimate what it actually might take, especially if you're a solo operation.
Hmm.
Mentally preparing yourself for something is huge, and you have to deal with a lot of unexpected things too. So,
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I love what you mentioned too about not underestimating what really goes into it. But I also feel like on the opposite end, that you being the sole person to do almost everything will really help you once you do get to the point where you might bring people in because you know everything inside and out. And so I feel like that hopefully will set you up for a really good operation moving forward as you continue to grow.
yeah, no, I hope so. It'd be great to work with people again. It's been about 7 years of this. Yeah, I joke with people that I'm unemployed. I was joking for so many years. Like when I first started this, it was like a dream because I didn't know that anyone would really care as much as they did.
Mhm.
And then after year one, I was like, I think this is what I'm doing now. And then year two, I was like, this is definitely what I'm doing. But as the years have gone by, it's like I've joked that I'm unemployable because I've gotten further into this rabbit hole of owning your own thing. That joke actually became true, I think, because I've tried. I shut the whole thing down at the end of 2022. I was like, all right, time to do something new. Nothing was fitting. Nothing
Mhm.
was. I think I'm wired differently, and I think that owning your own business forces you to kind of rethink a lot of things,
Mhm.
and it will rewire you. Um, but we're always changing and adapting as people, and every day's new, and I keeps it exciting, hopefully, and but yeah, I'm unemployable, so
I can totally relate to that because I feel like once you get a taste of being able to work for yourself and have that autonomy and things like that, it probably makes it hard to go back to working for someone else and having to follow someone else's rules or processes or anything like that.
yeah, we also have two living children. They're 3 and 6 years old, and when you add that into the mix, my wife has a somewhat normal job with like a normal schedule, and with having kids, like there's all parenting is my number one job, and there's always something that comes up. So it's like you have to thankfully my schedule is pretty flexible.
Hmm.
But if it's the sort of if I don't work, I don't get paid.
Yeah.
Actually, I lose if I will like lose money. If I'm not working, which I guess is probably true for everyone. It's just a little different for me because like when I have inventory, I need to get it out as quickly as possible to where it needs to go.
Hmm.
Because then the clock starts ticking. You know, I wait for this industry is pretty old school, like the beer industry and alcohol industry. Like everything's done on paper, and people like stores mail checks a lot of times. Like that's just kind of how it works. Every day I get this email from the USPS of like, hey, here's what's coming in the mail today, and it's like looking at like checks coming, and they come in, and like, that money just goes right back out. Just because the cost of something with raw materials and labels and auto and gas and all that stuff, it adds up.
Hmm.
So,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Matt, one of my favorite questions to ask our guests is what their favorite local businesses are to support. So I'm curious to hear the places that you love to frequent, support, and all the good things.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of great breweries in Massachusetts. I guess I'll start there. Castle Island is one of them. Here in Beverly, we have four breweries. I am technically the fifth like weirdo shed brewery that you can't come to. But there's four great breweries: Old Planters Brewing, Gentilly Brewing, Coastal Mass, and Backbeat Brewing. They're all awesome for different reasons. Um, and my buddies at Remnant Brewing in Somerville, I've become good friends with Charlie, the head brewer. I buy hops from him. We've learned a lot from each other. And then I guess I'll throw out a bone to Bonefish Harry's in Beverly. It's an awesome restaurant with like a tiki vibe to it.
Ooh, fun.
Good friends with the owner. Um, he has another spot too, but yeah, it's called Bonefish Harry's. It's just a really cool place. They've been big supporters of carrying my stuff there, Wandering Soul and Hidden Path. So yeah, that would be it.
That's awesome. Matt, this has been a really great episode, and I've really appreciated having you come on the show and share your really inspiring story and everything that you've done with both Wandering Soul and Hidden Path. And now I'd love to give you the opportunity to share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to connect further.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much. This is great. Yeah, my website is just wanderingsoulbeer.com and hiddenpathbrew.com. Both of those sites have a map where you can find the beer or the hop water. And all my social media is just at Wandering Soul Beer and at Hidden Path Brew.
Perfect. And I will link to those places in the show notes that our listeners can click through and connect with you from there. But thank you so much again for coming on today's show.
Thanks again. This was great. I really appreciate your time.